Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this game I'm going to show you how to disguise your Dutch defense against bishop f4, where your opponent is trying to go for sort of a London system setup. So disguising the Dutch with e6, pretending that we are going to play the French defense here, and then against the English we can actually just go with f5 right away and go straight into our Dutch. And already this is sort of music to our ears, so to speak. Our knight is coming out to f6 anyways, and now that the dark squared bishop is blocked in, knight to h5 attacks are that much more powerful for us, so we don't mind playing the Dutch defense against the London systems. We're going to establish really good control of all the light squares, while still usually maintaining our dark squared bishop. And so here we're just going with our typical fianchetto system. Anytime, remember that we're going to see e3 by white. As we see right here, the other note here is that now we know that white's light square bishop is going to come out somewhere on this diagonal, which we love to see because we know now that we're going to bring our bishop over here and start putting an attack right there. Very often the light square bishops just get traded off here. But nothing wrong with this move order. And he goes ahead and comes out right away. I don't want to take the light squared bishops off the board right away, so I just go ahead and play knight to c6 and let some tension build around the center. Quick note there, if I take, he can take with the queen, putting pressure on my rook, and I'll have to play knight 6. And then we end up in this position where both bishops are off the board, and now his queen is sitting here, and we're actually behind in development in terms of move order there. So just yet another reason to develop our knight to c6. He's also moved his bishop twice already, and we have yet to move a piece twice, so that gives us a nice little edge here. So he wants to remove the defender. We don't have to respond to this because, as we'll see, after b5 we can simply shift the knight out of the way, and then after he takes, we takes, and we don't mind having our knight on the square, putting pressure on everything here, potential jumps into the center. It's great having this knight here because this a4 push by white is completely unnecessary. He's simply going to lose a pawn. If he pushes it, I'll take it with my knight. What he needs to do first is play c4 and then knight to c3. But already he's in trouble here because, as London players so often do, he plays c3. And to move it again so quickly up to c4 is going to end up being, again, him just losing time to us. So we'll go ahead and get castled here, and queen comes out. Here I like the move d5. There are just some pushes. We know that there's different motifs that are coming here, and so I just like to jump up, start to demonstrate control of the light squares here. Important that we fight for those without our light squared bishop. So he develops, and now of course, if you play the Dutch and you do play d5, you have to realize that you're going to create a hole on e5 for your opponent's knights to jump into, so you just have to be ready for that. I decided to put pressure on the queen because from here I can jump my knight to c4, and from c4 I influence the e5 square. Now he comes out, and I feel like he can just take here and everything sort of opens up, so we don't want to allow that. We want to take with knight to d2. We don't want to break up our pawn chain. And what's also important is that if he can get this knight in here and we can't challenge it right away, he can then swing his other knight over to f3, and then he's going to have control of this e5 square with a knight guaranteed, because we have no pawn pushes left for us to help out there. So snagging this knight prevents white from guaranteeing to be able to get a knight onto e5. And also, it's really interesting, is he takes back with the knight. So he just moved this knight to d2, and then he moves it to f3, and now we've already got him to move it back to the square. So white just losing time. Game is still considered equal at this point, and I go ahead and just play c5 immediately, allow en passant, cut off the bishop, and win the pawn back this way. And what really works for us here is, regardless of what happened, whether he takes en passant or he takes here, I'm not sure what I would have done in the game. Probably would have taken with the bishop. Regardless of what he decides here, he's going to be left with this backwards pawn on c3, this silly London pawn that's going to harass him for the rest of the game, as you'll see. So en passant, trade off the bishops, get back, and now, how should we respond to this? White can now jump his knight to e5. There's a really good move that we can play here. We don't have to play defensively. We can just continue our plan of bringing one of our rooks over to the c-file, putting double pressure here, eventually get stacked, and have our battering ram set up. I decide to just go ahead and play knight e4 first. One of the reasons that this move is so good is it keeps an eye on the e5 square. So once he jumps there, our queen is going to be safe. And because we can just trade it off, but also the knight keeping an eye on our b6 pawn, there are inevitable a6 pushes coming here, and it's just going to be nice to have the knight as an option to jump over it and make that capture, with then the ability to jump into this knight post on c4 where it can never be harassed by a pawn. So I really liked the knight on d7 here. So very well, he stacks. And I do not want to allow this pawn push. So I do something that you hate to be in a position to do, but I decide to put my queen right in front of it there. Give away a little bit of the initiative, but I don't mind, because what I like happening here is after he comes in and attacks, I like swinging my queen into here and then bringing my queen over to the king side, where we now threaten lifts. We threaten rook lifts and pawn pushes to open up the king side. And so I've just decided to meet now this pawn push that may come on c4 with just a rook slide over to c8. That pawn can't be taken because his queen will be exposed, and if he moves the queen out of the way, we can just jam the rook up in there and go from there, and then we still have the knight defending everything here. So I feel confident that unless white brings all of his firepower into our queen side, that I don't need my queen over there, and I can migrate to the king side and get some attacks happening over here, as I've showed you. So this is really polarizing the game. This is really not playing conservatively and just doing your own initiative. And so I do get him to spend some time over here with the pawn push. Of course, he's getting tired of waiting to see what will happen over here on the queen side, so he does start pushing the pawn. Not bad while he's got the rook backed up there. And now I want to start to try to create some chaos. I want to start loosening up some squares around the king side. Computer says I'm worse here, but I'm not playing the computer. I am playing a human. So we start loosening some things up. I find a nice target in the rook there. If he doesn't take with the rook, he has to mess up his pawn structure, and that makes the square really juicy for me. So I'm just trying to seize the initiative a little bit, just trying to make some pushes, make some things happen. And now the game gets really tricky for a second. I decide to go ahead and just sack and just put his king on lockdown mode. Now, what's really interesting about this position is if white finds the move queen to e2 right away, then he should be absolutely winning here. But he doesn't find it. He slides the rook over instead, and I am able to get my rook in. We take. Now he tries to threaten a queen, and I decided in this instant, and it ended up being the right decision to do my move, but pause for a quick second and see if you can figure out what the optimal square is for you to put your queen. There's only one, and taking his queen is an option. You would just be putting your queen on e2. Should we take here or should we not? And if we don't, where should we put our queen? Okay, so you had a chance to pause. There's only one right thing to do here, and it is to take the queen and start running the pawn. Now, this is very interesting. This is a really interesting position, and I'm not going to play the whole thing out for you. It takes another 30 moves for us to get the win here. But essentially, this pawn cannot be attacked by a rook here or here because the knight guards both of those squares. So this knight can never come under attack from the rook because it's defended by the pawn, so the rook would have to take the pawn out. And the rook cannot attack the pawn from close distance. It's going to have to do it from another part of the board. So keep that in mind. This knight is a beast, and I would much rather have black in this position. We start the march up the board. And now I've got the pawn advanced all the way up to a3. So the computer still says that this position is equal. And as you'll see, we get to a point where I basically offer white a draw by repetition. I feel good about where I'm at. I have the black pieces. I'll take a draw against a similarly ranked opponent. He was only 1 rating point off from me in this game. So I'm totally fine drawing a game as black, especially after an exchange sacrifice that put my opponent into a position where he had to find the best move, otherwise the game would be equalized, which it is here. And also, you can't see my clock here, but I have 11.9 seconds left on my clock at this point. So I would be totally fine just accepting a draw. Here my opponent has a chance to get the draw by repetition by just playing his rook back to f8. He decides not to. And now we're in a really interesting position, and this is actually game over. This is game over. The rook cannot jump back and forth from h6 to a6 and stop these pawns. So here they come. I threatened a queen over here. He has to run back. I threatened a queen over here. He decides to take. And this is just easy stuff at this point. Notice that the rook can't come over here, again, to attack the pawn because it's defended by the knight. That knight got into c4, and it just never left c4. And it's game over from here, and I now have 13.7 seconds left on my clock because of the 2-second delay, because I played 3-2. So all of that was I was able to do automatically, and a lot of my knight being happy on this c4 square starts this early in the game. It starts this early in the game with white with a pawn on c3. So now his knight can never even go to c3. So if you're white players, you guys got to stop this nonsense. c4 or bust. So anyways, I hope you guys found this game really interesting and got some good ideas out of it. Just playing around, seeing what the sequences look like, replaying the game here just for you guys quickly, and just realizing some of these ideas that you have at your disposal, especially when we come into the middle game. Locking up here is okay. Harassing queens is okay. Defending the e5 square by virtue of having the knight on c4 is definitely okay. And then locking it all down. Infiltrating with the queen, swinging her over to the king side is okay. Because now you've got options like this that give you some interesting possibilities. And I think maybe what would have been better in some circumstances might have been to get this pawn up to a5 instead already before I organize the exchange sacrifice. It's hard to say. He can just play knight e5 here and jump in. So lots of things going on, but I hope you guys found this one useful and just realize the power of playing the Dutch defense, disguising it early on, and then it can really be a great fighting weapon against a system like the London. So have a good one, guys. If you liked it, like and subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.